What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming, it's brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. Thank you for your support. We have links to Patreon below. We are also brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. If you're in the UK and you're using gear especially, or even if you're not, you could use some lab work, and you can get that lab work done at evalbloodanalysis.com. In fact, if you're lucky, you might even have Dave there to do your labs for you. Though also, you guys give like an evaluation on the lab work, right? Each one? Am I right on that?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And we're brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK for additional savings over there. And supplementsource.ca for our Canadians. Great deals that change week to week. Thank you, ma'am. Got my water. Today, we are going to talk about a topic, Dave. We're going to talk about you wearing a pink shirt.
It's not pink.
That's the main topic of the day. Guys, Dave is wearing a pink shirt on the podcast that says Monster. Is that what it says?
Yeah. Monster Factory.
What's that?
It's Monster Factory is predominantly a clothing brand run by Mick and Amy. Up in Redcar, but there's also a gym there as well. Mick's a big horror fan as well, so he's got this amazing collection of horror memorabilia.
Oh, you're kidding me. Is he the guy you gave the hammer to?
Yes.
Okay, this is adding up. And is that at the gym now, like on display?
Yes, it's next to his fairground hammer strength machine.
His
like
what?
A vintage one. So it's got like an old fairground hammer strength, you know, where you hit the thing and try and ring the bell?
Yeah, it's by Hammer Strength?
No.
Oh! I get what you mean. It's one of those machines where you hit the hammer. You happen to call it Hammer Strength. And now I understand what you're saying.
Because it's a strength machine, isn't it? It was an old age strength machine in the fairgrounds to prove your strength by hitting the metal disc with the hammer and causing the metal thingy to go up and ring the bell. That's the technical explanation of it.
I know what you're talking about. I was thinking of something else. I think some other people might have been with me. All right, Dave. We appreciate the story of your pink shirt.
It's salmon.
Guys, comment below. Is there even a color called salmon, or is it all just pink? Please comment below with that.
I'm at one with my sexuality. I'm not intimidated by a pink shirt. If you have to act uber masculine all the time because you're actually worried about displaying your inner homosexuality, that's fine with me, mate. But I'm at ease. You know what I mean?
It's a good point. It's a good point. You have to be like a tough dude to wear a pink shirt and pull it off, you know? All right.
I'm not so sure I'm pulling it off, but
all right, listen. So here's the topic. So we did the big Tren topic last week. Tren Ace, Tren E, methyl Tren. We didn't talk about Tren Hex, but you know, whatever. So there's that.
Somebody always complains.
Yeah. Here's the thing, man. So somebody asked us, how do you guys feel about people who are not competitive bodybuilders that are using Tren? Keep in mind, man, I feel like I'm going to say like at least 75% of our audience is not competitors. They're non-competitive. And I would even say there's a section, a population of those people. Some of them I know haven't even used gear. Some of them actually have no interest in using gear. They just enjoy the show. But I would say there's a majority of our listeners are not competitors.
I would say 85% of my client base is non-competitive, but
mine too.
Of that 85%, probably 90% use gear. I don't. Right. It may come across sometimes on this show that we're being a bit elitist, which we discussed this word before we started, whether it was the right one to use.
I think elitist is good.
It is. Yeah. I think it is the right word to use. And I've often said I'm not a fan of Tren in the off-season. I only think it really needs to be used pre-event.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I don't stand in judgment of someone making a choice to use Tren. My personal opinion is it's a harsh drug, it's a powerful drug, and it should be safe for special occasions, so to speak.
Like your birthday?
You always like your best top in it. You only get it out when you really need to impress. And I feel Tren's a bit that way. Now, that's not to say I have any judgment of anyone who decides to use Tren in the off season or tries to use Tren in every cycle they do. That's their choice. You just need to be accepting of any consequences that come of that. There may be none, there may be lots. It all depends on you and how well you tolerate the drug. But so no, I don't have a judgment on people that use drugs because whether they're competitive or not. I don't have a judgment on people that use Tren, irrespective of whether they're competitive or not. That's their own choice. But my personal opinion is that certain drug behaviors are unnecessary. But I understand why people do it.
You get results like whether you're following your diet or not, whether you're advanced or not. You know, the stronger the compound, the more results you're going to get. So there's that, right?
I've had discussions with clients about cycles and with other people about cycles and said, look, the bottom line is you don't train hard enough, you don't train effectively enough, and you don't adhere to a diet close enough to get the results you want.
Yeah.
We do have the option of compensating for that with drugs. That's your choice if you want to do that. I don't stand in judgment of that, but I'm also not going to hide from the truth that that's why we're at this situation where we are. You know, so it's, and I think the problem is that a lot of people struggle to separate that directness and honesty and see it as being non-judgmental because they automatically take that as an insult and judgment. It's not a case of that. It's just an observation of where we are. Yeah. You can compensate for poor diet adherence. You can compensate for lackluster training by using more drugs. Plenty of people do it. Fine. You know, that's fine. That's your choice.
Would you go as far as to say crack on, Dave?
Well, all I would say is that's their choice. It's not ideal.
But would you say crack on?
But it's your personal choice to do it. So, yeah, crack on.
Thank you.
You're happy now.
I was waiting for it. Crack on, guys. And I agree with you. Here's what I hear, Dave. When I hear somebody say that I'm a competitor, this is what I hear. I'm not thinking to myself like, oh, you've earned the title to use these things because, you know, you've shown to the world that you deserve to. My thought is this. This person is probably following their diet 110%. You know what I mean? Like this person has adherence to a plan. At the end of the day, I just want to see people get the best results they can. And it does irk me. I'm going to be completely honest. It does irk me if somebody was like, hey, I party all the time. I don't have a good diet, but I'm using Tren because I know it's really strong and I know it's going to like get me the results I want while I don't have to try. Because I feel like that's a recipe for continued long-term use. It's a recipe for having to take more to get less of a result than you could have had you been more plugged in. At the same time, though, I do agree. I don't care what the compound is, crack on if that's what you want to do, regardless of where you're at. I don't have a moral judgment against somebody. You know what I mean?
But in that scenario you just described, I'd actually respect the fact that they are being open and honest about the fact that they recognize there's a lack of effort on their part. And my whole issue is, as long as you understand why you're doing what you're doing and you accept any down the line problems that come from doing that, that's all you. Fine. What I get annoyed at is when guys will use drugs for compensatory measures because they don't want to do the training, because they don't want to do it. They know that's why they're doing it, but they, one, lie about it, and two, then blame everything else when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I hate the phrase steroids fuck me up because at the end of the day, it was your choice to use them and it was your use of them that caused the problem. Not the drugs. The drugs are inert objects. They don't have a choice in what happens. They do what they do. It's your usage that has created the issue. So like I say, you know, no, I and the other thing is I've seen some absolute, let me say this in a nice way. I have seen some very low quality athletes in the physique that they presented on stage in competition.
Oh, yeah.
And I have seen some very high-quality physiques that have never competed.
I agree. Across the board, though, I would generally say that if you're a competitor, you're generally, at the very least, you've got the anxiety of knowing that your friends and family are all going to look at you in your underwear on stage, and that forces you to then adhere to a diet for at least a chunk of time. So at the end of the day, man, I just want to see people stay safe. I want to see people stay safe, I don't care what they're taking. No matter what, though, there's going to be risks. You could be, obviously we see it all the time. Competitors that have health issues, you can still push the boundaries and get hurt as a competitor. That's for sure. Hey guys, so I'm seeing that like 35% of you are not subscribed to the channel, which on one hand is great. That means that YouTube is getting us in front of new people. On the other hand, that means that we might not see each other again if you don't hit the subscribe button. We have several bodybuilding podcasts each week. We've got our reaction videos. We're doing YouTube shorts. So let me encourage you right now to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you're enjoying this show, then please hit the like button and leave us a comment. So let me ask you back on just to finish our topic up. Is there any compound that you would say you should never take that unless you're a competitor? Or dosing or anything that you would say is like quote unquote off limits or should be off limits?
I don't think I have the right to tell someone not to do something in that sense. But I do think there are products that I personally would suggest wouldn't be my choice.
Okay.
Unless you were going to be doing X, Y, Z. But I've seen guys do a gram plus as a first cycle.
Oh.
That wouldn't be my advice. That wouldn't be my choice.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's up to you as an individual what you do. I took very high levels of drugs. I did it for a reason. I got very big. But for a large percentage of people, they would say that, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. That was pure abuse. There was no need for that. And I can't disagree with them in one sense. It was like, no, you're totally right.
You did have people that were like, you were kind of controversial in that way too. There were people saying that, weren't there?
Yeah, and it's like, no, I can't disagree with you. This is abuse. This is blatant abuse. This is me taking more than I need to see what it does and to see the physical impact it has on my body, while at the same time trying to get to this ridiculous size.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel I can stand in judgment of what anyone does in that sense, but through what I've experienced and what I now live with and what I know, I would say that my advice would be to approach things differently, depending and would look at cycles based on what you're trying to achieve and where you are and what your risk factor appetite is.
As far as like what you're trying to achieve, here is how my cycles would differ for a non-competitor versus a competitor. So as a competitor, we don't care what you look like every day. I don't care what you look like 3 weeks out from the show. Obviously, I care about how you look to an extent, but I don't care if you look like you're stage ready or not. That's not the point. The goal of a competition is to look a very specific way for about 1 hour of one day. That's it, right? So
that was what Dorian always said.
Did he?
Yeah, judge me on where I look like on stage.
Yeah. So because of that, I may opt for faster compounds in certain situations. Whereas if you're a non-competitor and you say, hey, I just want to look as great as I can and look like a competitor and look good on the beach. I'm going on vacation in July. My wife and I are traveling for a week and, we're going to the beach or whatever. I want to look good in the gym through the summer in a tank top. I would be more likely to say okay, well, what would be compounds we could use that would have a sustained effect, like a masked E versus a masked P. You know what I mean? Something where we can carry that long term versus we're trying to put it in for that last, get that look for 1 hour of one day. We're just trying to look pretty good nonstop,
Yeah, I mean, comp is an extreme look. Well, a decent comp is an extreme look, and it's just not a sustainable look in any way, shape, or form. Whereas the lifestyle look is obviously much more maintainable. So it doesn't require the same level of anabolics or the same strength of anabolics on paper. But then you factor in that individuals willing to be adherent to what they need to do, and that's where the recipes start to change.
I got one. One compound that neither of us would probably use, diuretics, for a non-competitor. It'd be very rare that I would say we need to pull water. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't use diuretics for a non-competitor. No, I wouldn't advise diuretic competitor. I to be honest, I think once I've had somebody who was non-competitive want to use diuretics.
Oh, yeah?
Well, he wasn't competitive, but he was doing a photo shoot.
Oh, okay. I could see it for that. We know we're trying to, once again, we're trying to peak for a specific time frame. But generally for a photo shoot, you don't need to be the same. There's a difference. Stage lean and photo shoot lean is a very different thing. Because you want to still be able to have fullness and be able to carry a pump and be able to, you know what I'm saying? You can have a little, you can be a little softer in a shoot.
You also have the added advantage that the photographer can tweak the images a little bit to make you look better as well.
Or a lot, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that on a stage in front of 7 judges.
All right. Well, listen, we got a bunch of questions here. I hope that this clears it up, Dave. I hope people get something out of this. I feel like we went a little bit long on that, and I feel like we might have gotten a little sidetracked. Do you think we got sidetracked talking about the ancillaries and stuff?
Maybe, but who cares?
Okay.
It's our show. We could do what we want.
Do you want to see Magic Trick then?
No.
People liked my magic, Dave. I just got to tell you right now.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't.
Yeah, we got a lot of comments actually.
What? About how shit it was?
No, we got comments. In fact, I could probably find one here. Let's see. We have so many questions. Yeah, how about this one? From Fast Times, he said Scott should have pursued his talents as an illusionist.
Yes, but at Fast Times 3518 is a pseudonym for Scott.
We also got this comment from Cornelius Parkin. He says, last 5 minutes were great. LOL. Love your dumb ass, Dave. Going all the way back to us being on TM mods. Going on 15 years now. What was TM?
TM was testosterone muscle. I think it was test muscle. So we were both moderators on it. So it was when I first met Con.
Oh, we had Scott chimed in. He had some. We're going to drag our topic out, but he said it seems that a competition is considered a more socially acceptable reason for using and abusing high doses of drugs. I think the main ethical question revolves around what extent a goal or a specific goal, competition, or, for example, Dave's goal back in the day, justifies potential deleterious PED use.
Scott, we're dumb on this channel. Please use small words.
All right. Let's see what else we have. Oh, look at, there's another one, by the way, before we get into the questions. That was an impressive magic trick, Scott.
Stop setting up false accounts. Nobody was impressed with that utter pile of dog turd you put on last week.
It was really good. It really was. I appreciate you guys following and stuff. I'm going to create a new channel just to teach you guys different illusions and stuff. All right. How about this one? Are there any SARMs or steroids that do not affect fertility and sperm count? This is from
SARMs.
Underground Arm Fights.
SARMs, by definition, should not, but unfortunately, they've never been successfully developed. I do believe Scott actually might be a bit more, seeing he's with us today, might be actually a bit more on point with the current development of SARMs, but I do believe that actually the original, so Ostarine and Androgen S4, came the closest to fulfilling the original brief of a selective androgen receptor modulator. For those that don't know what that means, basically an androgen product that only affects certain androgen receptors. In this case, androgen receptors in muscle tissue. So it wouldn't cause suppression, it wouldn't affect fertility, it wouldn't impact the prostate and other areas or hair loss or anything of that nature. As yet, they've never actually made one that works properly, though I believe some have got quite close. Fertility risk obviously is a little bit dose dependent as well. I mean, even the milder SARMs like Ostarine, you take enough of that, it will suppress you. But for most people, it's very mild on its suppression point. How impacting it is specifically on sperm production, I honestly have no idea. Never looked at any data for that. I've only ever looked at it from the point of view of testosterone suppression. I would suspect that the two are pretty much hand in hand, but I don't know for definite.
I would think so too. Just guessing.
But as we currently stand, I think pretty much all SARMs and anabolics are going to have some suppressive nature towards natural production of both sperm and testosterone.
All right. How about this one? Jose asks us, if using Tren in a strength application, how late in the show would it be added to get the strength benefits? I.e., if someone wanted to run other compounds over a prep and then add Tren in as a finisher, how long would you wait? How long would you do that before add it in before the meet?
I would say 4 to 6.
Yeah, I'd agree. Trenase, right?
If 6, you could probably use nth for a power meet, but I would say 4 to 6. I may even be tempted to do a low base Tren nth, and then so at 6 weeks introduce Tren nth, and then at say 3 to 4 weeks out introduce Trenase on top. But looking at the total dosage overall with it as well.
I've kind of felt personally in those types of situations like Tren is already in there. And then if you're using the term finisher, I would go more with an oral, you know? And I understand you're just operating within the context of what he's asking. But would you, I don't know. I'd prefer to, I'd feel like the Tren would be in there and then the oral would be the finisher.
Yeah, but what I would do is I would specifically use the Tren at a lower dose than I would be looking. So for argument, it'll say, let's do a scenario. Let's say my overall intention is around 400 milligrams of Tren, right? So 6 weeks out, I bring in 200 milligrams of Tren E, and then 4 weeks out, I layer on top of that 50 milligrams of Trenase Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So my total milligrammage of the initial intended 400 is still there or thereabouts.
Okay, yeah.
But I've just approached it in a different manner.
I go with that.
And then I can drop the Trenase post-show, particularly if we've got someone who's going to do multiple shows. Just to add another fact to this, if they've got a qualifier and a finals and they're quite close, I can leave the low-dose training in the background in the bridge and then bring the ACE back in to peak for the second show 2-3 weeks later. But still get a drop for a couple of, for a week or two in between.
Okay. Lucas says, we talked about taurine. He says, Strom Hydromax. Serving has 5 grams of taurine. That's a good amount. 0 cramps after that. Best stuff out there. So shout out to Strom. And thank you, Lucas, for mentioning it. Another magic trick comment. Very good. Another magic trick comment. Oh, man, so many of them. It's hard to dodge all these magic trick comments, Dave. I got to tell you. What are your thoughts of IGF, DES in a calorie deficit? And maybe we just talk about IGF in general.
Not a huge amount. I've got very little experience with it, to be honest, so I'm going to default to you on this one.
Yeah, I haven't used DES. I've only used LR3. And I have seen people do well with it and specifically for fullness during a dieting phase. It's really nice. It does have an insulin-like effect, so you do have to watch for going hypo if you're in a calorie deficit. But I would say, though, that I've seen people who've done really well with it for fullness, much like they would, with growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all I have to add. I wouldn't think of it as being like a massive game changer or something like that. How about this one? It says, guys, I have a newbie question. Can you please explain T3, T4, and go a bit in depth, please? What are the common dosages? When to administer? How often and frequency of dose? Most important, I'd like to know if there is a need to do a recovery protocol after using these compounds, such as a PCT for gear. Or do the thyroid hormones recover naturally after stopping usage of these compounds? Thank you very much.
Shall we just write him a cycle while we're at it?
Yeah, for free, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a lot of requests there. Dosage-wise, the general rough approach would be 100. The real general rough approach is a ratio of 1 to 4. So 4 times T4, whatever your T3 is, and the general replacement dose would be 100 micrograms of T4 and 25 micrograms of T3. The effect of this can vary from person to person. I've seen that in a lot of people just replicate nice mid to higher end natural ranges. In a few people, I've seen it push T3 high because they have a greater conversion of T4 to T3. And in a few people, I've seen it push T4 and T3 high. Dosing is daily. Dosing needs to be fasted, and it needs to be a good 45 minutes away from caffeine, because that will affect absorption rate quite significantly. And that can definitely be a factor in when people have declared on bloods that I'm using T4 and T3.
You've seen that difference?
Well, I've never seen the difference because I don't know if they are taking it fasted without caffeine, but I'm saying that could be a contributing factor to why I see so many varying levels off the same dosing. From what I've seen, thyroid does appear to be generally quite robust and does seem to tolerate it quite well. However, the use of thyroxines as a more long-term thing is a relatively recent development in our drug use protocols. So it's only really in the last 4 or 5 years we've started seeing people using T4 and T3 in the off-season, using them as a matter of course if growth hormone is being used, and seeing people on them for much longer extended periods of time than we have done previously. Up to press, though, I haven't noticed any significant results coming back in as people having low function post usage or sustained low function post usage. So at this point, from what I've seen, it does generally look to be well tolerated. It does take time to recover. The compound does clear relatively quickly. I mean, it's not like day in, day out, but obviously it requires daily dosing, so that gives you an indication straight away that it will clear your system quite quickly. But generally, I see it take 3 to 4 weeks, the thyroid function, to sort of recover totally. The good thing with thyroxines, though, is that if you taper the dose down, you will see TSH function come into play, and therefore T4 function come into play as levels come down. So I would look to a taper approach for coming off thyroxines. So I would look at a taper down rather than a stop and just sort it out. But I would have said that neither is particularly negative. So if you do have to stop suddenly, it's not a huge issue. But an ideal scenario would be a taper. to allow your natural function to start to kick in and come up so that it's more seamless with the transition.
Yeah.
And that's really all I've got, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's I guess just to like explain some of the other, like the basics of it is like TSH helps us to then produce T4, which then converts to T3, right? So when you said like 4-to-1, you know, 100 micrograms of T4 is said in like commonly referred to as being like the equivalent of 25 T3, which is the active thyroid, which is like that's what's really important for fat loss overall.
You will often see that people who actually have low thyroid production that will medicate with T4. Now in the UK they only provide T4.
They do here in the US a lot of times. Like they're not really, they're pretty finicky about T3. They don't give it out a lot. Yeah.
And very often part of underactive thyroid, particularly if it's a condition called Hashimoto's, it actually does impact the conversion of T4 to T3 as well. So someone suffering from Hashimoto's not only will not produce high levels of T4, but may also have issues converting T4 to T3. T3 is the main feedback mechanism for TSH production. So you'll see someone with Hashimoto's supplementing with T4, and their T4 levels will be mid-range, but the T3 level will still be on the lower end, and as a result, TSH will still be elevated as the body is still trying to push T4 higher.
Yeah.
So T4 acts as the main feedback for how much TSH we produce. Much rarer to see overactive thyroid. That is not common at all.
I'll share my personal experience of using these compounds in a contest prep experience that with T3, when I've discontinued it, I do have a foggy feeling, or I know when my body's become dependent on it, because if I had forgotten to take my T3, I would feel foggy, like I forgot something, like I forgot to drink my coffee, like I forgot to insert a chemical that my body was dependent on, you know? And then I remember, you know, maybe it's 10 a.m. and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to take my T3, and I take it, and 15 minutes later, the clarity is back and I feel back to myself. Now, when discontinuing T3, the same thing will happen for a period of time. I'll sense it, even if I reduce the dose, you know, taper down 50 to 37.5 to 25 to 12.5 to 12.5 every other day. And then I stop for a couple days. I'll still feel like slightly foggy, and then I bounce back personally.
One thing I should have said or I forgot to say.
Yeah.
Elevated T3 and low T4 is generally not negatively impacting.
Elevated T3 and low T4.
Yeah. Okay, so if you take T3, you don't take T4, you're going to have elevated T3, but the feedback mechanism is going to mean you're going to have low T4. Yeah. Generally, you'll feel fine with that.
Yeah.
High T4 and not the corresponding level of T3, you will feel like dog.
Yeah.
And if that differential, and so that T4 gets particularly high and T3 is not responding, so that conversion is bottlenecked in one way, then it can get very severe depression-like factors, anxiety, and several other things can start to kick in when T4 is too high in comparison to T3. Yeah. So that relationship does need to be managed very well in the T4 to T3, but T3 to T4 does not, if that makes sense.
The main people I see that have issues with this kind of stuff, it's like a female who also has gallbladder issues, who also they have major digestion issues. They've been on contraceptives, hormonal birth control for most of their lives. Like I see a pattern of certain females that have issues with T3 and T4, and I see it in females a lot more than I see it in males. How about you, Dave? Do you notice a difference?
Not particularly. I mean, I know people who do suffer with thyroid problems, and they do seem to have more anxiety issues and things of that. They find anxiety a little bit more difficult to manage. I've only ever used T4 once.
Personally, you mean?
Yeah. I couldn't get hold of T3, so I used T4, and I did notice the negative impact of T4 being high. I didn't do the bloods, but in further research, I discovered that if T4 is elevated and T3 is low, you'll get this real depression-like influence. And then it happened with one of the athletes we work with, who's competitive and at a decent level. He couldn't get hold of T3 for a period, so he was using high-dose T4.
Yeah.
And he was really struggling, and I suggested that this might be the problem. And as soon as he lowered the T4 or introduced T3, he found those problems went away. So the T4 to T3 conversion is the bit that is not standardized within people, and that can have its limitations. So just because you're pumping T4 up does not mean that the conversion to T3 is going to go up in balance.
Okay.
So you have to watch that.
I just looked up males versus females with Hashimoto's, and it says, who does a Hashimoto's disease affect? Anyone at any age can develop Hashimoto's disease, but women and people assigned female at birth are 10 times more likely to get it than men, and people assigned as male at birth.
Okay.
Common age is of onset, a diagnosis is 30 to 50. I had one client, a male client, whose mom had Hashimoto's, and he did struggle to bounce back after having used T3. He's the only person I've worked with that have had that struggle.
There is definitely genetics in that. If someone in the family or family members have it, you will definitely be at greater risk of having a thyroid issue. Yes, without doubt.
All right. We got some listener questions here. Let's go to Alfonso from Gamboni Law. He says, do you guys think that different forms of cardio are better for muscle preservation and muscle building support? I think the rower is by far the best form, but wonder if rowing 4 days a week at moderate intensity is counterproductive to weight training. I think walking is a total waste of cardiac benefit standpoint.
I feel walking is cardiovascular beneficial if you are very unfit. But if you have half decent fitness, then yeah, it's just going to add to your NEAT value. It's literally just going to be calorie consumption.
Yeah, like Alfonso, he's in great shape. I'm sure he is. He's always doing cardio, talking about all sorts of great exercises in his home gym. There's no question. Like, for him, walking is nothing.
With cardio, I'm not so convinced it's the type as more of the duration.
Yeah.
Cardio by nature is not going to be high intensity if it's long duration, and longer duration is definitely going to, I feel, have some impact on muscle preservation. Having said that, too much HIIT will have an impact on muscle performance in the gym when you are doing your weight training. So I think it's more of a case of the total exposure to cardio. If that's too great, it will start to negatively impact either your performance or your recovery for your weights.
Have you seen it? I've seen this, that some people, they do really well with HIIT, and HIIT's really great for preserving leg mass. And then I've seen it where other people, their legs get whittled away with HIIT.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think natural genetic makeup, muscular twitch fibers, and all that sort of stuff are going to come into play as to how you're going to respond to various, physical stimulus in the way of exercise and muscle preservation. But yeah, I'm always a bit wary of. I mean, when you prep anyone for a show, or you diet anyone down, there's always going to be that. How far are we willing to bring food down in comparison to how far are we willing to take calorie expenditure up in order to get the deficit we need to create the progress? And that's always going to be a toss-up from person to person. I have one client who I I basically have to starve to get any weight off him. He just does not drop. Whereas I know personally I respond better to higher food but much higher cardio output.
Speaking of cardio, Dave, people are going to ask.
Oh, don't. No, I've done fuck. I tore my calf.
You what?
I tore my calf. I didn't know I'd done it.
What do you mean? How did you do that?
So when I finished Fitex, I came back home and I tripped coming into the house.
Okay.
And I pulled my calf. That's just what I thought I'd done. I thought, fucking, I'll just pull my calf. It was sore. I was limping. It's been sore for a while. And then, was it last Thursday? The bruising came out last Wednesday or Thursday, and my calf's black, my foot's black. And I've torn my calf. So, no, I'm not doing any freaking cardio. And my wrist is still bad, so I still can't support my weight with my left wrist, though it has got better.
You can do jazzercise with the other arm and the other leg.
You can go and boil your head.
Okay. Important question from Matt Blevins. Where's the cabbage?
You know, I don't know.
Oh, he might be over here, Dave. He might be over here. Look at I don't have my thing, but I got a plastic bag.
Yeah.
You want to see a trick? I bet you I can find the cabbage, Dave. Where's the cabbage? Where's the cabbage? And here he is. And he's gone.
Scott Stevenson, how do you put up with this, man?
Yes. All right. What else do we have here? Hi, guys. Do you think that long-term TRT use, what do you think of long-term TRT use with a UGL? Thinking of the metals and not knowing how hygienic the product is.
Generally speaking, you'll find out how hygienic the product is pretty quick.
Yeah.
That sort of thing reveals itself fairly sharpish because you'll end up with a bloody infection. I know a lot of people who have used UGL for very extended time with TRT, and it doesn't seem to have any negative effects in those areas. I think the biggest risk with self-diagnosis TRT is poor management of dose, but other than that, I wouldn't say I would be particularly concerned of things like heavy metal buildup when you're using TRT levels of use.
I'm with you. I've done underground for TRT for a lot of times, and yep, that's the main thing, is that like you're in control of your own dose. A lot of times too, you're like, well, it's like 300 milligrams per milliliter, and like you don't really know exactly what you're getting from a UGL. It's hard to get unless you get the same product and you have the same batch. You know, it's like you're going to be a little off, a little high, a little low. You know, we're all going to err on the side of a little too high. You know what I mean? There's that. Off topic of gear, says I use egg noodles as a carb source. I never heard of anyone talking about egg noodles. Is this good to go or bad?
I don't even know the carb value in an egg noodle. I would have thought that it wouldn't be particularly high.
You'd be fine. You could use it as carbs. Look at that. Scott Stevenson. He says, I'm looking forward to Scott's new podcast, The Master Mentalist of Muscle Magic.
I do feel that Scott Stevenson may have had a mental breakdown.
It's possible.
If he's looking forward to your magic, it's more than possible.
And he's back.
Oh, God.
And he's gone.
Look, see you lot, this is what you encourage. It is not a good idea to encourage a mentally disabled individual in this way, because it's only going to end in disappointment. When he goes on America's Got Talent stage,
oh God, I'd love to do that. Hi, I'm here. My name's Scott.
Because he is absolutely garbage.
What if you're wrong, man? What if I'm up there
for the tears that will follow?
Scott from the Drugs and Stuff podcast is here to do some magic trick with a plastic grocery bag. But once they see Christmas cabbage, they'd be down.
And a green stuffed cabbage, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be really good. All right, let's clean this thing. So egg noodles, I think they're fine. There's also rice noodles, and I've seen people use those. They're just fine. You just have to look at your macros. Does it work for you? I don't think that egg noodles have any additional fats. Let's see.
No, I just didn't know what the carb content was.
They might, though, now that I think about it, if they have yolks in them.
Hang on.
Oh, these. This says no yolks. So if you're using... Okay, so here's the deal. It's not maybe as perfect as, say, rice. 1 cup is 40 grams of carb, 3.3 grams of fat, and 7.6 grams of protein. So you are getting more protein and fats in there than I think you're going to with some other carbs. It's not as like pure as a singular carb source. If you are not a competitor, you're not trying to get peeled, and you're using egg noodles for 1 meal a day, that's going to be fine, I think. You know, if you're using egg noodles for 6 meals a day and you get to a point where you need to get leaner, you might have to start adjusting your protein and your fats to adjust for the progress you're not making with the egg noodles. That would be my thought. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What am I hanging out for, Dave?
No, I was looking for the same, but you beat me to it. Okay.
So, yeah. If you use a cup of rice, it's 0.44 grams of fat. Now, 3.5 or whatever it was grams of fat per cup, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're trying to, say, run a low-fat diet and you're using 150 grams of carbs from the egg noodles, then it might make a difference. Most people, though, like, you're going to be totally fine. All right. See what else we have to clean up here. All right. How about this one? So he says, what's going on? So I've been running Testy 500, Tren E 200, and Boldenon for 300 milligrams weekly for 10 weeks. I switch to 1,500 milligrams of Sust, 400 Deca, and Tren at 100 weekly, plus my AI. My question is, my blood work came back at 2,700. My testosterone level, everything else came back out fine. Should I lower my testosterone to 500 weekly? I feel fine. I do check my blood work every month since my insurance covers it. I don't understand why.
I'm completely confused. I don't know what the question is.
I don't either.
If you're taking a gram and a half of sauce, you're taking a gram and a half of sauce because you want very high testosterone levels.
Yeah.
I don't get what your aim is. You don't need to. Well, I mean,
if it's supposed to be TRT, you're off. Right? It was a little off for TRT.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be in range here.
I'm a bit confused there as to what the question is. Your test level will be relative to how much test you're taking. All right, DECA or MPP will show us test as well on the test, but it'll be as high in relation to the drugs you're taking. I don't understand why you would want to lower your testosterone level if you chose to take a gram and a half of Sust.
Yeah. All right, one more. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I'm done.
Okay. Jake asks us, question for the next show. I struggle with not being a moody jerk when dieting. With or without gear. He actually used the P word.
I feel him.
Is there anything I can do or did when dieting to help lift my mood or make human beings more tolerable as the calories go down? Cheers. It sounds like this is one you can really relate to, Dave.
I love it. Yes, mate. Just accept fat is beautiful and get on with it. It was just the terminology. Tolerate human beings. I have that feeling on a regular basis.
Struggle with not being a moody jerk.
I've always struggled with this. I haven't really got any solutions after years and years of just basically not liking anyone when I'm dieting.
It's just period. You don't even have to be dieting.
Well, there is that as well, yes. But
what difference is there for you?
There is a subtle. If you truly love me, Scott, you would know these things, but obviously you don't.
You're a moody jerk to everyone all the time, whether you're dieting, whether you're eating pie. You just sometimes when you talk about pie, I feel like there is probably like a sweet moment that you have where you're actually probably nice to people.
Little sparkle in my eye as I talk about pies. I find that actually the more extreme the diet, the easier I cope with it, and I think it's because I sort of mentally know this is hard, and then I'm more focused and switched on about how I behave because of that.
Yeah.
When the diet's less intense but still restrictive, it's almost like my brain hasn't accepted that the food's come down, and so my brain's going, why isn't there more food? Why am I hungry? Why does everybody piss me off? Whereas when it's a hard diet, it's like, I know I'm hungry. I know there's no food. I know people are pissing me off, and I need to adjust to that. Other than that, I really can't give you a solution because it's the only other thing I can suggest is that you keep yourself mentally occupied, because a lot of the mood is the fact that you know you're denied. So if you can distract yourself by being mentally occupied, by having to think, by having to do things mentally, you're not focusing on the fact that you're not allowed that cake anymore.
Yeah, gratitude. That would be my big thing. You know, dude, and I got to tell you that at the last contest prep I had done, I loved every minute of it, Dave. Like I didn't have an issue with it the whole time. Granted, I was like mentally foggy by the end, but here's the thing, man. I felt like, geez, I'm getting this opportunity to get into shape that most people never have the opportunity to do. What? What are you pointing at?
You.
Me? What did I do?
You're nuts.
Yeah, no, the gratitude, it really is the key, I think. When I have clients that get moody or irritable, like I hate it when I hear like that. I've had a client that's like been a jerk during their prep and they've taken it out on their family. It's like, come on, man. Like nobody told you that you needed to do this. This is your choice. So if you're going to be moody about it, then stop. You know, don't be a baby. That's my thought, you know, is like, be grateful for this opportunity. Do it because this is what you want to do. And if it's otherwise, then you don't want it that bad. And like, do whatever it takes to be happy. Like, I don't want to see somebody miserable the whole time.
I don't want to lose weight.
Okay.
But I know I have to.
Okay. Then but are you really doing it though?
It's getting there, but I don't want to do it, but I know I have to do it, but I don't want to do it.
Then there's a mindset thing that needs to change, I think.
You know, it's like I have no issue with my visible appearance, even though I know it's not conventional and I do carry a lot of excess fat. But I personally don't have an issue with that. I don't look at myself and go, I look at myself and see who I am, but it doesn't bother me because it's like, look, I've done what I wanted to do with my physique. I tick that box. Yeah. I went where I wanted to go with it. Whereas now it's more a case of, I know I need to lose weight for health and longevity and everything else, but there's no other upside to that in the sense of like I will visually look better. I don't care.
I don't think that you'll be able to do it then, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't. I don't think you will. Because you don't want it,
I get to a break point and then I start to struggle. And that's always been the case, but we'll see. We'll see how we go.
I've been nice to you and been like encouraging. So now I'm just going to say, I didn't mean to, but I think I'm onto something here. Be like, Dave, I don't think you can do it.
No, you're right. Probably right.
No, you're supposed to be like, I'll show you, you know?
Too old, too tired. I'm fuck with that shit anymore. Said that to me 20 years ago and I'd have been a biathlon in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Scott Stevenson, he says, seriously, a daily gratitude journal can help. And I agree with that. That's what I've told people that I work with to do. Be like, hey, figure out a list. And it's important to write it down too, because then you visually see it and you're going through that process of writing it. I'll ask them, like, what are 10 things you're grateful for? And sometimes they'll be like, what's 10 things you're grateful for with bodybuilding? And I mean, the things are there. Like, hey, number one, if they're working with me, you can afford a coach. You're in a financial position to have that luxury. Number two, you've got the finances to buy your food. You know, you've got the support of your girlfriend or, you know, husband or whatever. You know, those are like 3 things right there. That we live in a world where you can actually choose what you're going to eat. Like it's a big deal, you know. And I think that if you go through and you force yourself to come up with a list like that, it really does change your perspective. If you're grumpy, it really does help.
Yeah, I get it though, and a lot of time I don't even. I mean, I'm lucky in that my wife will just turn around and say, "You're being a moody twat. Pack it in," and it'll snap me out of it. But
yeah,
but a lot of times I think you don't actually even realize you're doing it because you just don't actually realize where you are with it. And I mean, she's the first to say to me, "You're being a." You know, you're being grumpy or you're being this or you're being that, whatever it may be. And it's like, right, okay, no problem. I'll check myself and
you do. I have seen you do that. I have seen you check yourself before. You are very honest with yourself in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you know, whatever I choose to do and wherever I've put myself in life does not give me the right to treat other people like crap.
Yeah.
However much people piss me off, I either have to deal with that in a sensible way and say, look, you're annoying me because of X, Y, Z, or I have to find a way of internally coping with that and moving on. But it's not my right to pass that frustration on to people around me.
Is that your advice of the day too? Do we have
I think it's going to be, because I'm actually sat here thinking if this goes on much longer, I'm going to pee myself.
I've had to pee this whole episode, man.
I was just about to send you a message going, Scott, we're going to have to finish.
I've had to pee this whole episode. Guys, thank you for tuning in. That was good advice, too. We appreciate it, Dave. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com, get your lab work done by Dave, but let him go pee before he takes your labs. And Strom Sports Nutrition and supplementsource.ca and truenutrition.com, user code THINK. And thank you to everybody from Patreon. Dave, for another episode of Drugs and Stuff podcast. Thank you. Goodbye.